Professor Thakur's paper is on democratic negotiation, engaging with knowledge traditions.
It's very so it's an exciting moment for me, and I'm sure it's an exciting moment for everybody for two reasons. One, that I think that our generation is struggling hard to crystallize something. It is not creative theory, something else. But we are not very happy with the way we have been doing our disciplines, the way we have been engaging with knowledge. And therefore, probably that is one of the definite lower minimum denominator that combines all of us, that we are not happy with the existing state of knowledge. I will not try to define, as Professor Modi rightly said, creative theory, despite the fact that a lot of our friends keep asking us, what is this creative theory? Do you mean that others are not creative? Do you mean that rest of the world is imitative theorists? Or if you catch hold of anybody and you say that he is creative, what are the parameters of creativity? How do you call it creative theory? I'm sure that in today's discussion we will come to such points, as Professor Modi rightly said, that we are evolving, we are dissatisfied, we are struggling, and there are, in this process of struggle, there are certain milestones that we would call as signifiers of creative theory. I mean, not the definition, but signifiers of creative theory. One or two I can quote, and then we can move on to the idea that I want to pose today. One is that, as Ranjit Singh used to say, if you are not political, you are nothing. As simple as that. If you are not political, you are nothing. If your theory is not connected with the struggle of the people, it is not a theory. If you are not drawing upon the people's struggle, you are doing nothing. So I think this is one of the core ideas that all of us have concerns. We would like to engage with people's struggle more and more, and would like to theorize that. This is our theory, our knowledge that we can create out of that will be liberative knowledge, and liberation obviously is the core concept around which I think creative theory keeps revolving. What I'll do is, I'll not talk about creative theory more, except that I think one more sentence that is commonly shared by all of us is that knowledge is a collective project. It is not an individual project. It's a collective project, and therefore we struggle together to create certain knowledge, and we hand it over to the public domain and to the new generation, and which continues. It's a collective project. It's a intergenerational project. Generations are spent in generating certain kind of knowledge, and that's what I think we are seeing. And therefore, we have kept 5th September as our day. You may call it Foundation Day. You may call it the annual conference day. Whatever it is. Now, what do I want to do today is I have a question, and the question is quite troubling to me, that how do we engage with different knowledge traditions? The Islamic knowledge tradition, the Hindu knowledge tradition, or the Indian knowledge tradition, or the Western knowledge tradition, the Christian knowledge tradition, all kind of traditions are around. And how do we engage with them? What has been the engagement? And how do our scholars have engaged with them? I think before we get into it, let me talk about one of the problems that I face in this. If we assume that all human beings are reflexive beings, and they are engaging with the reality, and in that process they are creatively producing concepts, categories and knowledge. If all of us are like that, then how far one can say that a particular society doesn't have knowledge, doesn't have political theory, doesn't have political philosophy? I think many of our thinkers have been talking about it, that is there any Indian political theory? I think this question itself is very surprising to me, because if a society is constituted of human beings as it is, then it must be designing theory for itself. In which language, in which form, that one can always question. Now, if that is true, then why it is that, what are we doing about it? What's happening to the Indian scholarship? Why are we raising this question at all? I think what's happening to us is that there are three processes: the being, the thinking, and knowing. These are the three processes I think in Indian situation they have got disjointed. We think knowledge is something given outside and we have to learn that, and therefore we have to accommodate ourselves according to the available knowledge. Therefore it's an alien thing for us. Whereas if one thinks about one's own being and being in the world, knowledge of other people, so that would be a creative exercise, and also that would be a liberative exercise. I'm told that this tension of engagement between being, thinking and knowing is not only Indian problem, but it's problem of the third world in general, the colonial country in general. I think what is happening is probably this disjointing is probably caused by a kind of master-slave relationship in which the world exists. The center of knowledge production is at one place, and rest of us are kind of expanding that knowledge to further horizons. Creative theory probably wants to reverse this pattern. Wants to say that, well, knowledge produced by any human being anywhere in the world is a collective resource which should be used for liberation of human being anywhere. And particularly if the knowledge is produced in the process of struggle in any part of the world, that is a collective resource of the humanity as a whole. And that's my starting point. And that is what I call a democratic negotiation method of engaging with different traditions. The democratic negotiation assumes that the role of knowledge is not controlled as a modern state, and the modern state produced in the process of colonialism does think that the role of knowledge is controlling the people. Instead, I think the role of knowledge is liberating the people. Therefore, it should be not controlled by any organization, institution, even the universities, I think. Universities are, in a way, creating islands of knowledge and assuming that outside the university knowledge is not being produced. Whereas I think the knowledge is actually produced by the people in the process of struggle itself. And the role of university is only to articulate that knowledge and refine it for the public consumption. Now, what is this democratic negotiation? And I will give two examples of this democratic negotiation to make my point. One is that how do we engage with Indian knowledge tradition, the classical Indian knowledge tradition. There are two approaches. That is what is the dominant approach, I can say. I will take two examples. One is the classical Indian intellectual traditions, and second is the colonial, the knowledge produced during the anti-colonial struggle, that is modern Indian political thought. The classical knowledge tradition in India, what somebody may call it Hindu knowledge tradition, somebody may call it Indian knowledge tradition. I would like to call it Asian knowledge tradition. There is nothing called Indian knowledge tradition, it's an Asian knowledge tradition. This nation state was not actually the category of the knowledge production. It's the Asian region which has continuous engagement with each other and it has a different kind of knowledge tradition. Now, one approach is called religio-political approach. Religio-philosophical approach, which treats all this knowledge as part of religion. So Ayurveda is religion, philosophy is religion, all Indian philosophies are part of religion, and therefore in the West, all Indian philosophies are being taught in the departments of religion, not in the department of philosophy. I'm quite surprised about it. When I enter into looking at the texts, six most important texts of Indian philosophy of 6 schools, they never talk about anything religious. Take Nyaya, Sankhya, Yoga, none of them talk about religion, none of them talk about God, none of them talk about any authority outside the existing world. Yet they are treated as religious. So this was the dominant paradigm quite for some time, and therefore the idea that India doesn't have philosophy. Many philosophers believed quite for some time that India doesn't have any philosophy. Fortunately, now they have started accepting that India has philosophy because of another kind of approach that has emerged, which is called comparative philosophy approach. And you have Mohanty and Matilal and others. They are philosophers who have spent all their energy in suggesting that if West has philosophy, India also has philosophy. And some of them say that, well, West has rational philosophy, India has spiritual philosophy, as if human beings are not simultaneously both rational and emotional and passionate and all. So they think that we can divide the two worlds. Take for example, writings by Radhakrishnan and all could not take cognizance of Nyaya philosophy as a logical philosophy. It's only of late people have started, and particularly in the West, people have started talking about Nyaya as a major philosophical tradition, which has nothing to do with emotion, in a sense that it is very rational, argumentative tradition. Amartya Sen now, since he has written an argumentative tradition, therefore now people are rediscovering that in a big way, that there could be an argumentative tradition in India. So this comparative philosophy, one phase of comparative philosophy was just like if you read S.N. Das's History of Indian Philosophy, read first few pages, you can easily see that there is a power relationship within which he is speaking. He's just asserting that probably if we write the history of Indian philosophy, we can assert that India has philosophy. You read Sarkar's writing on Mimamsa rule of interpretation, says that, well, we have a theory of interpretation. 1905 is speaking in Oxford. You can imagine what the situation, somebody suggesting that India has a theory of interpretation. And you can see that between the lines, you can easily read that it is the power relation within which he is speaking. So the comparative philosophy tradition definitely remained within the power structure. It's of late, since 1970s, you will find that there are some philosophers talking about Hydrolytic Dialogue. Now let us not talk about whether we have this or they have this. Let's have some kind of dialogue at the hermeneutic level. There also, I think, even now, I attended 3 days conference of Indian and Western philosophers, and the title of the conference was very suggestive: Rendering Indian Philosophy in English Language. It's a very funny title, but very interesting title, because it suggests something. So there is a struggle, and I've charted out 5 kinds of approaches in the West. Somebody like Mirananda completely rejecting, saying that all this is rubbish, to Rajiv Malhotra, who says that this is very different philosophy, we have to acknowledge that. In between we have Indian philosophers. And I asked this question to many people like Rajiv Bhargava and Ashish Nandi, that what happened to you when you are asserting something, in between you drop your project. Rajiv's book called Methodological Individualism is an excellent book produced by Indian mind, suggesting that human beings are more complex than being unidimensional. But then the project is over. Let's take 2 minutes. So the project is over after that book. And he says that I didn't have the confidence to write another book. Now I would like to write it. Or Nandi says that yes, we fear writing this kind of straight critique of that philosophy, because that may create some problem for us. So I think there is a big problem that these kind of approaches do have. The alternative approach I suggest is that let us think of conceptual frames, the questions that we are facing in the struggle. And in that struggle, if we need certain kind of theoretical formulation, we approach any resource available anywhere in the world and let them compete very rationally. Let them engage with each other very rationally, and then see how can we frame this kind of idea which can be useful for us. And this is not something that I'm suggesting. I think this is the method 2 of the great thinkers, Marx and Gandhi, adopted. Look at Marx's method. 3 different philosophical traditions. He's engaging with them, not interested coming from where and who is trying to advocate that. Drawing things from them to construct a new idea for his struggle. Or Gandhi, look at Gandhi's writings. Not at all interested in whether it was emerged, and the idea that Gandhi was modernizing the tradition is a very, very surprising idea. Gandhi's concern was not modernizing the tradition. Or somebody saying that whether it's a derivative discourse or not derivative discourse, I don't think Gandhi's concern was that. Gandhi's concern was take idea from anywhere in the world which is useful for liberation struggle. I think Gandhi, Ambedkar or Marx, you can have a look at the method, and I think this negotiation method I have carved out from there. That is how we can reformulate our way of engaging with that. And the last thing, I think, I will not I'll take 2 more minutes. Another example I want to take, and it may take 2-3 minutes, I'll try to be as brief as possible. Look at the history of psychoanalysis. It's very interesting. Jung comes to India, writing on epistemology of consciousness in India. Before he leaves India, he gets a letter from psychoanalytic community, the association or council, whatever it is, that you have to denounce the writings that you have produced while in India. But that goes against the interest of the psychoanalytic community. And Jung says that he had to write. He says that all my writings on epistemology of consciousness in India were my infatuation with India, with other culture. It's only at the age of 62 when Jung has a dream, and probably somebody like Aurobindo appeared in his dream, and then he writes. He said that nothing doing now, I will write about Indian epistemology of consciousness, which is much more advanced than the Freudian epistemology of consciousness. To look at Lacan, gives an idea. He tries to give an idea that, well, culture is significant for construction of the psyche, and we can't understand, like the Freudians understand the individual, merely based on the initial condition. That's the epistemology of positivist modern science. We can't continue with that. And he is excommunicated from the scientific community. And he had to deliver like 4 lectures on psychoanalysis, which had to be, the venue had to be changed 4 times in a day because people started pouring in. So it seems that there is a politics of knowledge and there is a power relationship in knowledge. And that is where we want to see whether we can overcome that. And if we look at Sankhyan philosophy of consciousness and then try to read Marx, Freud, Lacan and Jung without thinking that whether we are taking it from East or West or from Sankhya is the Indian philosophy or whatever it is, if you connect them together, you will find that you have much better operative structure which can give better understanding of the consciousness at the present juncture. It's not to prioritize anything, but just to have a democratic dialogue between these traditions, produced in different contexts, and evolve a theory which can be more liberative and good for our time. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.